Hi, this is Farid Sampson with this episode of the Living Working Abroad show. We've not been here before. Um, Proact Partnership offer expatriate advice to business and family living and working abroad, investing in overseas property and relocating overseas. You can contact us at proactpartnership.com where we can get advice on free reviews, paid for consultations for people living in the Middle East, Asia, uh, Central America, Europe, uh, where your business or your family is living and working abroad. We do that from a UK perspective to a degree. This is where the base of the partnership is, and we've got an EU office in Cyprus where we cover Portugal, Spain, France, Greece, and other EU destinations. And we feel that we can offer a family, individual residency, company, trust companies, holding companies, all at half or more saving in corporation tax code. But for more information and guidance, contact us at partnership.com. This week's show, we're going to look at a few different issues which are mulling around, which are bringing about big changes. And one I want to feature at the moment is the changes being brought up in 2025 by the introduction of Donald Trump and the Trump effect to change the world, to change the way things are being done around the world. What Donald Trump is showing us is that with a different perspective and with a determination to make progress, then indeed we can change the agenda and make things slightly different for people living and working abroad. And boy, those changes have come through. So within America, they're dismantling the state, the public services to create a leaner, fitter, lower tax environment for American citizens and American business, which is all very good. What we see in Europe and in other countries around the world is still clinging on to the old idea of socialism. Socialism arose in the 18th century and came to a fall with the Russian Revolution in the early part of the 19th century. What we found then, with that, in 1917, it's actually the 20th century, forgive me for that faux pas, um, what we saw is they introduced socialism and, and introduced it to other countries, but actually it failed. When you take people used to living a city life or a town life and you move them onto agricultural form where they need to learn how to feed and produce food to subsist without making any money, but have a subsistence lifestyle, it doesn't work. And people starve in Russia, the same as in Cambodia. The Khmer Rouge came in with their socialist policies and starved the population who didn't know or didn't have the food or the resources to be able to feed themselves. We've seen it in other countries around the world. In Europe, we introduced social democracy, which is a soft form of socialism to try and do the same. But what that's led us to is high tax, high regulation, and low growth. And Europe is in danger in the world going forward of being eclipsed by strong growing economies like America, like the Chinese economy, like the Indian economy, and potentially the Russian economy if they can get out of the way of re-engaging in conquering lands to be the Soviet Union again. So we can see this is rapidly moving forward with Trump now. Russia and the USA have held in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, a conference on getting a settlement of the Russia deal that is fair to everybody. The EU are beginning to get involved slowly with the Ukrainians to talk about how they can um, manage the borders without UN peacekeepers, without international free zones or whatever. What's going to come of it, we don't know. But obviously, the Ukrainians need more than a little reassurance that the Ukrainians aren't going to step into their. Uh, the Ukrainians need more than a little reassurance that the Russians are not going to step into their land again, which they did a couple of years ago in 22, as well as back in 2014 when they co-opted the Crimea Peninsula. Can understand why Russia wants access to the Black Sea ports and give it some access there, but international law should prevail and sort that out. Which is why we've got an interesting scenario with Trump offering to rebuild Gaza and manage the situation. It's a devastating area, but actually the east coast of the Mediterranean, if you go back 50 years, 60 years, Beirut was the monarchy of the eastern Mediterranean. Now it's been ravaged by 50 years of war and pestilence brought upon the whole of the area. If the Gaza Strip area and Beirut could be regenerated to create that wealth and that free moving society within the rules of the people that govern that fairly, and not the tyranny of oppressive religious, the tyranny of the religious or political elites, whether that's a Syrian dictator or an Iranian theological dictatorship, we will see. So it doesn't matter whether you're Gaddafi in Libya, Saddam in Iraq, Assad in Syria, or the Iranian political elite. Let's be fair to all the people living in their country and living abroad, and let's not go propagating war around the world from your safe haven. So this is hopefully what the Americans can achieve. And from our EU office base or Cyprus base, we can confirm that the American, there was a proposal initially that Cyprus would join NATO. Cyprus is not in NATO, but it is going to affiliate. It's not going to become a full member of NATO, not least because of Turkey's objections. Turkey and Cyprus need to settle their differences over the divided island, and so that the Turks and the Greeks can live alongside each other in harmony as Cypriot people, not as different people. So that's what we're looking for. The Americans now are coming along to the Paphos area and upgrading the Paphos airport. So there's a military base on the Paphos airport. It was originally a military base. Bizarrely, the motorway between Paphos and Limassol, for those of you who know it in Cyprus, it's got this long stretch of road on, and it's actually the reserve runway in case there was any military activity ever. How bizarre is that? The Americans are going to come along and they're actually going to pay to upgrade the facilities and the structures at Paphos Airport to make Paphos a bigger, more dynamic international airport for tourists and visitors, but also add the security of upgrading the military base that's on the same campus already, so that the American forces will be accommodated there, while the British forces staying in Akrotiri. So it made a lot of investment in Cyprus, a much closer connection with Cyprus and the USA, as well as Cyprus and NATO, and Cyprus and the EU, if Cyprus can join the Schengen zone and the EU, and with its low tax policy already in existence and not been undermined by the previous Biden administration's attempt to hike corporation tax rates around the world. That's now been scuppered by the Trump movement. So what we're looking at now is the potential for low tax Cyprus to offer international businesses a safe home for a family trust, a family business, holding company, a trust company, where there's 0% inheritance tax and 0% capital gains tax and dividend taxes on worldwide assets and income. So for more information about basing your family business and investment assets in a tax-free family trust, contact us at proactpartnership.com. After my international uh, uh, scoop and reveals, the next part I want to feature in today's show is to look more about the UK and highlight how it's manifesting and emphasizing the impact of socialist decline on an economy and as a way of running a society. The current British government were elected by default because over 25 years, um, both the British and Labour and Conservative governments were two versions of the same thing, this centre-left social democratic approach, where public spending was increasing and increasing and increasing with employees without any productive growth in the economy. So taxes have gradually and slowly risen, and now the bloated economy is damaging and undermining the country. For the Labour government got elected by default and turned out to be even more far left than any previous centre left UK government over the last 25 years. And the mood is very much towards let's get rid of that far left philosophy. Let's see how long it will hold. But meanwhile, what we can see is that so-called push for growth is not working. Um, Historically, 50 years ago, a social democracy would have wanted to do public investment to make growth happen. But actually, what we've learned is that it doesn't work like that. Yes, you need infrastructure uh, in a town, in a city, to build around, but you need private capital and enterprise to generate the wealth for economy going forward. And the bloated public sector with the additional 40 billion tax take that has already been taken by this new government is only serving to lose jobs in the UK and migrate business outside the UK. As we said earlier today, contact us if you want to find out how to hold your family assets, investments, and business in a tax-free family trust based in Cyprus. Um, we've seen lots of things and lots of headlines to discredit the latest the economic competence of the management team of the Labour government. But then, in addition to that, we see that now that the growth rate in the UK is declining. The UK in the last quarter of 2024 narrowly missed entering into recession and could do so in the next quarter. So far from accelerating and creating a growth economy, that the big tax hike and the uncertainty and the migration from the UK has completely undermined the UK economy and the growth strategy that it was on. We can only argue that the previous government's only big failure, apart from putting up corporation tax in the UK from 19 to 25% and increasing taxes all round to the highest overall tax rate ever, was not to be ambitious enough in terms of removing regulation and making themselves distinctly different from the past. So there's that drop in living expenses standard is already happening in the UK for individuals as the total revenue of the country falls, but the productivity is staying flat, and public expense is not leading to any more investment and any more growth. Um, Changes to non-dom rules, changes to capital gains rules, increases in national insurance all stifle job creation, employment and entrepreneurship in the UK. For more information how to manage your business and reduce your tax liabilities living and working abroad, contact us at proactpartnership.com. We can see in the UK a massive public reaction. So now the third party, if there is such a thing, it seems to be reformed. So tactical voting or regional voting in the last election saw the Liberal Democrats get 4 million votes, nearly half the number of votes that the Labour Party got, and yet they got around 80 seats to Labour's 420. These are round figures, please bear with me here. The Reform Party also got 4 million votes, but they only got 5 seats. And this is the trick of the first past the post system that the UK uses. So if you've got proportional representation today, then Labour would still have had potentially a majority, but there would have been as many Liberal Democrat and Reform MPs as there were Labour MPs, plus there would have been an additional body of Conservative MPs, another 120 there. Now, that is what in a true democracy, a free democracy, everything moves towards the centre. So waiting for a first past the post election going forward to rebalance away from the far left government that the UK's got at the moment, and whether that comes through political manoeuvrings within the autocratic party of government, of democratic government at the moment, or at the next elections, we will see. The most bizarre thing is that without any notice in their election manifesto, the Labour Party have introduced boundary changes to stop certain elections going ahead, which would have seen them lose large swathes of local authority government in the coming months. So what we're going to see in April and May is a distinct change in the political landscape of the UK, where potentially the local authorities could become activated with the Liberal Democrats, Tories and Reform parties winning much more seats and being able to offer political control. And potentially that could change the way the UK is working. Either way, we need to change if the UK wants to get into growth. If you want help living and working abroad, or creating an offshore holding company for your family assets and investments and trusts, contact us at proactpartnership.com. One of the biggest manifestations of socialist decline, arguably, is the European Court of Human Rights. Human rights, depending on what your opinion is, it's an area where human rights lawyers can have a whole career paid for from public funding of asylum seekers or people feeling they're displaced because they don't want to go back to their home country, or they got here illegally and they're being hard done by. That's one thing. Asylum laws were set up very, very, very clearly to stop people who are in persecution. And that was true of people in Syria. Now that despot who was running Syria has now gone. There is no fear of retribution of ethnic or religious groupings in Syria anymore. If that can be reconstituted with a stable government, there is no reason for a Syrian to need asylum from another country. Legal migration is something different, but there's no reason for that. But there's this establishment of this zombie state with the European Court of Human Rights, under the manifestation of the EU, creates this intense regulation which stops independent countries within the EU or who are members of the court. So although the UK is not in the EU, it's still a member of the European Court of Human Rights. So it's protecting people from things that are done that they find offensive. and it's a manifestation of this socialist decline. You don't see this in other areas of the world. And of course, the most popular and well-known human rights lawyer in the UK is Keir Starmer. And this has been his whole career in public service as a protector of human rights, defending the minorities, as is the person he's appointed the Attorney General. So the UK is all set up to appease people who want to make an excuse and abuse the asylum laws that were rightly set up after the Jewish genocide by the Nazis after the Second World War. That is a real circumstance. What happened in Rwanda and other countries is a real circumstance. That is what asylum law is for, not for economic migrants who want a free ticket into a different way of life. And the EU through the age uh, European Court of Human Rights is undermining the way that the world is running and the, the European businesses, the individuals who entrepreneurs who set up new companies, new businesses and try to expand and grow their business are being undermined by the regulation and the tax that comes with that regulation of the European system. Um, we, uh, Green energy is another thing. So whereas the Trump administration is rolling back on this drive towards net zero and electric cars, uh, um, EU is persevering with that. And now we have France. They've introduced 100% tax on somebody buying a Porsche SUV when it's not electric. So it's a punishment by the political elite, a tyranny of the masses by the political elite that want to foster their views on other people rather than let the democracy decide, the people decide, for them to have the freedom of speech, for them to have the freedom to build business, to create wealth, to pass it to their children, to employ people, to reward people without uh, taxing the income, then taxing the capital, and then taxing the death to affect the inheritance, to fund an ineffectual, parasitic uh, uh, public sector that will only drain the resources. Public service is essential for an economy, but not a bloated civil service and not a civil service and a function that is doing things that, that, that the private sector could do equally well. In Twitter or X or whatever Elon Musk is calling it this week, it's quite interesting that the US Vice President is actually calling out now as well uh, this thought police approach. So what we revealed in the Living Working Abroad show in the last few weeks is that uh, the British police have actually got a whole department where they're just tracking uh, social media to identify people, and they're under the encouragement of the Keir Starmer and the thought police are knocking on people's doors and raiding people's houses and businesses for them to say something which is offensive in their view of the thought police. Everybody should be treated in an ordinary, decent way. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to be obnoxious. You don't need to be offensive. So we can talk to each other, and that's what we should do. We can talk more forcefully, more directly, or more bluntly, and we should use appropriate language in the appropriate time. Okay. However, in a free democracy, with freedom of the speech, we should be able to say what we think. We should be able to agree. I respect somebody's opinion to say what they think, even if I disagree with it fundamentally. So if you firmly believe in a socialist utopia, then I respect that. I disagree with it, but I respect your view to say and protect your right to say that. And that's what should be the case. So social media doesn't need people's homes raided because of what they put in. It just needs that everybody, the collective centre, the collective masses come together to manage people from stop being rude and stop being offensive. You may get somebody who's naive, inexperienced, immature, who might say something uh, inappropriate, or somebody that gets highly emotional and wrecked, or has got a health issue that leads them to say inappropriate things. But still, beyond all that, the freedom of speech must be protected. And without the freedom of speech, we all become subject to the oppressions of socialism and the tyranny of the masses. And it just breeds more and more discourse in the world around us. If you want to build an overseas portfolio of investment, property, and business, whether it's a holding company, a trust company, or family business, that can protect your business and family from uh, high taxes, high regulation, and high fees. Product can help you set that up and support that using our resources. Contact us at productpartnership.com. I want to move on now to cover a couple of other technical issues, specifically about the type of tax notices you might be getting from your tax company. UK are Product Partnership are tax advisors for UK individuals and business, especially those living and working abroad with property rental or personal service companies in the UK. If you need advice and guidance on completing or dealing with UK tax returns, then you can contact us for help as you're using our agent services division, as well as our administration services division. Um, what I want to do now is just go through a couple of instances of the type of correspondence you might get from the UK tax office. Sometimes they will send you a statement of tax due. When the Inland Revenue is sending a statement of tax due, they're showing the credits and the debits of payments and assessments that they've got, and any balance that's due. Now, if you're living and working in the UK, you have a payment of account which you pay every 6 months, which can be quite a lot of tax. But when you go to live abroad, we need to get them to stop that 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 regular debit of a payment on account. It doesn't stop automatically, but when you're living and working abroad and you're not tax resident, if that's done properly, then the HMRC should stop requesting the payments on account. Now that needs special submissions in your tax return and your non-residency papers. And if that's been missed, you could be abroad for a couple of years and suddenly find out the tax office wants another 30,000 of UK tax from you. It's not that the tax has been assessed as due, it's just a payment on account against future taxes. But if you're living and working abroad and non-resident in the UK, you don't have any tax to pay. If you receive, as an expat, a UK statement of tax due and you don't agree with it and you want help and advice, you can contact us for a free review at productpartnership.com. A second type of notice that comes out from HMRC is what they call a simple tax calculation. This is a bit more of a fishing exercise from the UK, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do a tax return, but it could throw up and highlight the differences and changes that they've got. And it may be that your records are not correct. So for an expat living and working abroad, the big changes in 2025 is that civil government service pensions are no longer can be taxed outside the UK. They must be taxed in the UK. That doesn't apply to state pensions, and it doesn't apply to private pensions. You can still have them taxed abroad, but you need to apply to get the appropriate no tax code on those. For help and guidance on that, contact us at proactpartnership.com. And the important thing here is that if you've got a civil service pension, you will be getting in the February this year is generally when they start issuing a pay-as-you-earn code to tax you on that in the year ahead. So for the UK tax year 25-26, they will be issuing in February tax codings that shows the tax they're going to deduct from your UK public service pension in 25-26. You may agree with that or disagree with it. The good news is that while the UK will take their highest rate of tax, which could be 20, 40 or 45%, you don't need to pay the tax yourself in your home country. So then what we need to do is make sure that your tax return in your country of tax residence overseas, where in the country which you're living and working abroad, we report that the tax is paid in the UK. So if your home country wants 5% tax instead of the 20% tax that the UK paid taken on your civil service pension, then we need to report that tax was paid from the UK. And the two tax authorities will settle that between them. So you don't need to pay the tax in your country of tax residence and the UK if the UK deducted that tax at source. Also, remember that coding could be wrong. There could be not being allowing for different things. If you've got property rental income in the UK, and that was under 12,000 a year each, you may not be paying any tax. If you've got property rental income and a government service pension, now taking you into UK tax at 20%, even if you're living and working abroad. So potentially your taxes are going to go right up. Now there's ways to change that and to manage that and to reduce those costs. And for more help and advice and guidance on how to reduce the cost of property rental and civil service pensions, as well as getting your overseas tax return correct, when you get a simple UK tax calculation, contact us, ask us for a free review, and we'll give you advice and guidance on the actions that you need to take. You can contact us at proactpartnership.com. We also do sometimes receive a UK self-assessment tax calculation. So if you've done a tax return for 23-24, at some point you'll receive a self-assessment. Now, with Making Tax Digital becoming a thing in the UK, it becomes fully live from April 26. The Making Tax Digital will mean that you can get access to your government gateway for the assessment as soon as it's live. However, they are still continuing to issue them on paper, and we need to consider as well using online apps and facilities like that. So this is a big change that's coming in this year. This is the last year where the old system and the new Making Tax Digital system are operating side by side before it's full on into the 21st century from April 26. So self-assessment calculation, you can see that online before your tax agent, before your advisors, before we see it on paper. If you've got any queries on that, then contact us at proactpartnership.com. If your self-assessment is asking for too much tax, you've got two options. You could pay it straight away, but if you don't, they might add interest. But if you haven't got a liability for that tax, if you've moved abroad and if you made an application to pay your pension tax abroad, or your split year application so that's not relevant, then we can appeal that. It might take some time for the appeal to be heard and for the tax assessment to be redone. But when it is done, they will credit back the assessment and the appeal and all the other amounts. We found a lot of noise going on with Cyprus, with the UK changing from the old tax assessment system to a digital tax system. We're finding a lot of errors in the records where they haven't kept track of people over 40 years and all the records that they've got. So, lots of errors are there. They're there to be fixed. You need to make sure that you're not going to pay too much tax. You pay the right amount of tax in your country of tax residence, living, working abroad, even if that means paying some tax in your home country. This is not unusual. There's many countries around the world are already taxing people at source on their income. Norway, Canada, the USA. It's a changing world for the UK. So if you're an expat living and working abroad and you're not paying the right amount of tax, you need help and advice on tax registration, residency and returns, contact us at proactpartnership.com. We'll be available to help and guide you every step of the way. So thanks a lot for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Living and Working Abroad show. If you like what you hear and we think we can help, recommend us to others. You can watch us again and comment on YouTube, and we'll try and get back to you and comment there. Or you can contact us at proactpartnership.com, where we've got live chat, email inquiries, or you can book an online advice call with a consultant starting from £90. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you again next time.